Joining us right now on the Fan Hotline from the Post-Gazette is our buddy, Chris Carter. Fan Hotline presented by Sullivan Super Service, providing trusted plumbing and HVAC service for over 50 years. Good morning to you, Chris. What's up?
What's up, boys? How we doing?
Not bad.
Buddy, we got real college football tonight. It ain't week 0.
Yes.
Caught a couple
sir.
of good games. ACC team in action, North Carolina against Minnesota. We'll get to some Pitt with you. But first, forget the quarterback battle. We've talked about that enough. When you look at the Steelers' offensive line, who do you think they're going to go with to replace Isaac Seumalo in the early going? And who's their best option to replace Isaac Seumalo?
It doesn't matter what I think. They got two options, and they're going to choose one of those two. Spencer Anderson, the second-year player who was drafted last year in the 7th round, or Mason McCormick, the 4th-round rookie this year. Spencer Anderson, I think, might have a lead on that because of his versatility, and they've trusted him to be versatile this year. But I would not sleep on Mason McCormick. That guy was pretty strong. I thought in the preseason, when he gets it going, he is a very physical force. I truly think the future of the Steelers' offensive line could very well be Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, and Spencer Anderson and Mason McCormick as a group of 5. Anderson could be that guard that pairs with McCormick for the long run. So this might just be a first iteration of seeing some of that group when he gets the shot here. But certainly losing Isaac Seumalo is a big blow. That guy was your vet. He was your leader. He was going to be the guy that was the most physical. And I mean, I thought him working with Zach Frazier, there were some good signs of them doing that in the Lions game. That touchdown run with Cordero Patterson against the Lions, you saw both of them double team the defensive tackle. Seumalo chips to the backer. Frazier does a great job sealing the tackle to the inside, and that created a huge rushing lane. And now you have to work with a much less experienced player next to Zach Frazier on that side. It's going to be a challenge to overcome for sure in the Steelers' first month of football.
Chris, we obviously here in Pittsburgh have known that Russell Wilson was going to be the starter, and there wasn't a true competition, but it was announced yesterday that he is going to be the starter by Mike Tomlin. What do you think is going to happen with Justin Fields? And then let's just focus on the first game against the Atlanta Falcons. How much do you see Justin Fields playing? Is he going to play at all? And what would that look like whenever he does get into the game, if he does get into the game in special packaging?
I really see Justin Fields as a guy who the Steelers do see as a potential future quarterback, but they got to develop him. They're not going to put him behind the they're not going to put him there and just say, that was your only chance. See you later. Goodbye. Like you said, it was as much of a race between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields as much as if Justin Fields started at the starting line and had to run a mile, and Russell Wilson was started at the 3/4 mark and had to run a quarter of a mile to get to the finish line. Justin Fields made up some ground, but he was never going to catch it, and that's why people are saying it was never a real competition. Even though Mike Tomlin at times said we're having a competition here, but listen. There's going to be some times where I think Justin Fields gets on the field. I look at how they used him sometimes in the red zone in certain packages, in some 7-shots drills, in practices, in the joint practice against the Bills. I don't think it'll be a common thing. I don't think it'll be a regular thing, but I think it'll be one of the wrinkles that they try to work into this offense because they know you put him inside the 10 and you call a QB option. He could freeze the defense. If he freezes the linebackers and makes the right call, he could walk into the end zone or hand it to a guy who walks into the end zone or get a guy breaking open behind those linebackers who are frozen because they're so busy worrying about them walking to the end zone. I think that becomes a part of the Steelers offense, not a staple, but I do think it's something they try this year because the Steelers do want to see Justin Fields later this season at some point. Give him a chance to prove, hey, he can be the guy if they keep him on next year.
You think Russ gives them a better chance to win early? Like, you think this was the right call?
I do think this is the right call. But I look at Russell Wilson, and like I said, when I brought up the mile to quarter mile analogy, that's because Russell Wilson has all the fundamentals you want. He knows how to process defenses a bit faster. He has all the experience. He's going to be in here, and even with Seumalo being gone, he's going to know how to work with this offense, work with a young offensive line, and say, all right, let's get this done. Let's not turn the ball over. Let's stay on time. This is the plan here. Justin Fields is going to be getting his legs under him in those games, and it's going to take. I mean, he could have someday get there. Like he could get to there after some time, but right now, when you're going up your first game against the Falcons, and they got Grady Jarrett on that defensive line. They got Jesse Bates in that secondary. You don't have time to worry about that. You need a quarterback who's going to go out there and know how to handle it, even when he knows certain parts of his offense aren't as good as their parts of the defense, and the best way to work around them. That's where Russell Wilson's going to give the Steelers an advantage.
Chris, I asked this question to Bill Hillgrove a little bit earlier. You got West Virginia, Penn State on Saturday. Pitt opens up, obviously, on Saturday against Kent State. 2 weeks from Saturday, you'll have the backyard brawl. Who has the most pressure at head coach, Pat Narduzzi, James Franklin, or Neil Brown, in your opinion?
I believe Neil Brown bought himself some real estate last year with a really good season, 9 wins. You can't shake your head at that. If he had a bad season this year, I think he'd be back where he was last year when some fans were like, but I think he's bought himself some leverage. I think James Franklin, his whole thing is, can Penn State ever get over the top? But I do think that it is Pat Narduzzi who is under pressure, because if this Pitt team does not deliver and they have another 3-win season, 4-win season, this could be trouble. And this would be like back-to-back bad years. And then I think there would be some serious questions about the future of Pat Narduzzi. Now, granted, Pitt is an athletic department that wouldn't buy out Jeff Capel because of his buyout clause in his contract. And I don't believe that Pat Narduzzi's buyout clause is any less than what Jeff Capel's was. But football is a different beast in college sports, and this is a different day with NIL and the money that gets brought into the sport. So I look at Pat Narduzzi, and I think that, man, get at least 6 wins this year.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, because
yes,
you said that Pat Narduzzi needs to deliver. Do you think that's the line right there? 6 wins.
6 wins.
Okay,
that's the line. Get back to bowl, because here's the thing: you get back to bowl eligibility, right? Now you can say, look, that 3-9 was a blip on the radar, because I believe that was only the second time in Pat Narduzzi's 9 years last year that he finished with a losing record. So if you show that, hey, that was just a blip on the radar, a bump in the road, and most likely this year, if whoever wins the quarterback position, because as Pat Narduzzi has told us, it's still up in the air between Eli Holstein and Nate Yarnell, whoever wins that competition is probably going to be the starting quarterback next year. And then you won't have as many guesses, and Cade Bell's system is going to be in place. And there's a lot of young pieces on this team that are emerging. Look out for guys like Francis Brew, who I think is going to be a really good starting defensive tackle for the team. Look out for Cruz Brookins, who I think is going to be a really fantastic safety for this program. A lot of guys who are redshirt freshmen and freshmen will be playing on this team, and also true sophomores. And I think if they get through this season bowl eligible, there's going to have a core of guys that knows what it takes to get there, and they're going to be that much stronger because of it.
It's going to get interesting. I mean, with Cade Bell in his play calling and how fast he wants to run plays, but being on defense and Pat Narduzzi having that defense so secure. If you look at their schedule, is there a team on the schedule that Pitt needs to worry about? Like, is there a game that you're like, all right, Pitt needs to win that game? And it may not be the Clemsons of the world. I'm not asking the big time teams that are, in the conference that are on their schedule, but is there like one game that you look at the Pitt schedule, like they have to win that game in order to have a successful season?
Like a swing game kind of deal.
Yes, a swing game.
I look at the 2 games that they're going to play against the teams that just joined the ACC. And that's going to be really telling, because you're going to play both those teams in the span of 3 weeks. You're going to have your first 4 games, non-conference games, Kent State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Youngstown State. As long as they come out of that 3-1, I think they're in the right direction. If they come out at 2-2, they're going to have to do some serious work in the ACC. I don't look at North Carolina as an end-all be-all, but I feel like you have to beat Cal and SMU this year. Otherwise, you're going to need to go into Clemson, do some work, go into Louisville, do some work. And so, I look at those 2 games. Cal's at home in October, SMU's in Dallas in November. You beat those 2 teams, and then I think you buy yourself some leverage. But I think the key is getting 3 wins in non-conference. 2 of those teams are Kent State and Youngstown State. So really that just means win those 2 games and split with Cincinnati and West Virginia. You put yourself in a good position. And then at that point, you just need to win 3 ACC games. Mm-hmm. If you do that, you win 3 ACC games, you're bowl eligible, right? And I do think that they could bang with Cal and SMU and Syracuse and North Carolina and Virginia. And I think Clemson and Louisville, if they split one of those 2 games, this team, I think, will exceed expectations. But it's all about starting strong, getting out the gates. Last year, they did not come strong out the gates, and that impacted them the whole season. I think this is a young team. They have to start with good momentum and get up on their schedule. If they're asking questions about themselves after the West Virginia game like they were last year, this could be another long season for Pitt.
Really good stuff, Chris. We appreciate the time. Thanks for being flexible and moving for us this week, buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, fellas.
Thanks,
Take
Chris.
care. Chris Carter, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I think we're all like-minded on that for Pitt.
Yeah, that game for me is Cincinnati. Like, that is the most telling game of the season, I believe. And last year, I had a good feeling with Cincinnati coming in here, and I thought the same thing, right? They played Cincinnati, I think, the second game of the year, and then they went down to West Virginia, I believe.
Yep.
And I was like, they got to win this game, and that game looked ugly. It looked really bad, and I was like, uh-oh. It's like you're down going into a rivalry game. You have to win that game, and it's such an uphill climb. And then we saw how ugly that game was, and then I knew that they were in for it for the rest of the season. I feel the same way this year. Like there's a lot of new things, there's a lot of new pieces, but you have to, as Chris said, and as we said earlier, I think we were talking to Greg Finley before the show, they have to go 3-1 in September. They have to. Like, 4-0, awesome. But you cannot afford to go 2-2, and you can't obviously afford to have a losing record in the month of September and try to salvage a season. You have to start off fast.
We are going to get into all this in depth tomorrow. Pat Boss is going to be on with us for a couple of hours. We'll get it into all the local teams and get into the college football playoff too, which it's a totally different world now in college football. And forget all the NIL, forget all of next year paying the players and all that stuff. Just the tournament changes everything. I mean, look, Florida State loses game one. I mean, they can still
to
come
an ACC team.
To an ACC team. I mean, they come back, win the ACC. Who knows?
Right.
But that's a game that in the BCS era, your season is over.
Yep.
Your season is done. In the 14 playoff era, your season is probably done. And now it's not. I mean, Pitt was in the ACC championship a couple of years ago at 7-5. You beat Clemson. Guess what, boys? You are in the college football playoff. And I'm going to love the playoff when it comes around. And all these games are still going to feel big. They're not going to be as big, though. They really aren't. If you're vying for a playoff spot. Mm-hmm. If you're a team that fancies yourself a playoff contender, you now have more margin for error than ever before in the history of college football. And I know I love the playoff. I'm not sure I love that aspect of it. But we'll see how it all plays out over the next 12 weeks or so.